I truly think this particular picture sums it up pretty well indeed. We just want a truly healthy, a genuinely unmanipulated and a fair economy, but of course, in this current reality, that's just a mere dream. But today we're definitely going to talk about the overall crypto market, because the next few days could get very, very exciting. On the one hand, you can clearly see that we're slipping further and further into fear, and I'm hearing louder and louder voices saying that things will go even lower, which of course is entirely possible. So of course we could go even lower here. If you think about it, the actual crash lasted about 4 days. And if you compare the whole thing to the past, here we are now in 2021 on a daily basis, and this was the upward trend during the bull run. And here, as you can see, we had several corrections, and each of those corrections definitely lasted longer than just 4 days. This correction lasted 20 days, 8 days. That's actually not that long, that's pretty short. This correction lasted 14 days. But generally, even bull run corrections last several days, and it doesn't happen as quickly as it did here. Of course, it's possible that over the next few days we might see a bit more of a correction. Nevertheless, I still believe that we've seen the bottom. I don't think it's going to go any lower than what we saw here in this flash crash. That's just my personal opinion. Personally, I don't think we'll go any lower than that. I think that's it now, as long as this zone holds. Here we had a low, here a higher low, and here again a higher low. As long as this zone holds, as long as we don't fall below $108,000, we won't set new lows. Accordingly, I tend to expect new all-time highs in the coming weeks, because we're also getting good news here right now. But in the end, right now is a very critical market phase anyway. And yes, a lot of people are uncertain. But especially when many people are uncertain, when many are thinking that we might fall even lower, usually the opposite happens. Because even in this flash crash, we basically found support at the 50-day moving average on a weekly basis, which is extremely important. Just imagine that for a moment. It was only when we sustainably broke through the 50 EMA here that we entered an uptrend, a bull run. The bull run was only stopped when we broke down sustainably here. And now in this cycle, we've already tested the 50 EMA cleanly twice, and this was basically the third time. You can see it was really close. On some exchanges we tested it. On some exchanges we fell much lower. But I would say that was basically the retest of the 50 EMA, and after that we were usually able to rise significantly higher again in a sustainable way. And in my opinion, that's going to be the case again this time. It only gets really critical if we actually break down sustainably here and a weekly candle closes below this level. That would potentially be the start of the bear market for me. That would be very bearish, but that's absolutely not the case right now. The fact alone that this candle was bought up again so quickly is ultimately a good sign. That's why the market was cleared out here once, and theoretically things can continue from here, because that's exactly what we also see in the funding rate. On the funding heat map, we can clearly see that all the positions were liquidated during this big candle. That's obvious, of course. And that was exactly the moment when the market completely reset itself, and from now on, the market makers can of course push the game upward again more easily. At some point they have to liquidate the market and then push it further. That's simply part of how the market works. We've seen this in every cycle so far, only this time it was definitely a rough ride. And what also needs to be said is that the funding rate on Binance has currently slipped into the negative, and that's often a signal that we could start rising again. The funding rate ultimately shows how many are long, how many are short, how many people are currently trading. And when the funding rate is negative, it means not too many people are trading at the moment. The trading fees are correspondingly very low, and that's not what the market makers want either. After something like this, the market makers want to quickly bring a lot of people back in, and they can only do that if we see a nice upward trend again now. That's why usually the funding rate has signaled the bottom every time. So in my opinion, that's also a very good sign. All of this, combined with the global funding rate and the social metrics showing that everyone is currently bearish and negative, could already be an indication for me that in the coming weeks we might slowly start to rise again and even gradually hit new all-time highs. And yesterday we specifically posted a guide for Pionex. Feel free to check out my trading bots. I set them up before and during the crash, and these trading bots are working fantastically well. Sign up here via Mining by Pionex, and here you have a selection of my individual personalized trading bots, which have also been performing very well so far. Another potential catalyst for me is that Jerome Powell announced yesterday that QT is finally coming to an end. That means this restrictive monetary policy is ending, and for the first time in years, we will probably see an expansion of the money supply again. And that's pretty significant because since mid-2023, money has only been withdrawn from the markets. They deliberately withdrew money from the markets to slow down inflation, but that's now gradually coming to an end. Now we're slowly starting to see an expansion of the money supply again, and of course that's extremely positive for the markets and can bring us a lot of liquidity. We can also see in the chart here that this kind of development naturally benefits the markets. An easy monetary policy brings trust and money, and people become more willing to take risks and instead invest in risk assets, such as Bitcoin. So this could also be quite positive. Of course, it's important that inflation continues to cool down, and according to the latest data, that still seems to be the case, so this can definitely be seen as a positive sign. And because one piece of good news yesterday wasn't enough, Trump of course had to stir things up again. He went ahead and announced another trade war with China. So in that regard, we still have ongoing uncertainty and ongoing problems, to be perfectly clear. Accordingly, some people are in a good mood, while others are pessimistic. But what you can see is that gold has once again reached a new all-time high, and there are even pictures of people lining up in front of a store just to buy gold, even though we're already at an all-time high. And here we can see that we must be nearing the top for gold, which in turn also means that there are still uncertainties in the market. So we're not completely out of the woods yet. There are both positive and negative news, and overall, things remain exciting. This whole liquidation hasn't been fully dealt with yet because Binance had massive problems there. On Binance, coins dropped from $3 to $0, which actually shouldn't be possible. People were liquidated even though they were trading quite safely, and we haven't seen anything like that in the past. Something like that really shouldn't happen. And then Binance started saying, yo, we're going to pay you back. We'll pay you back 300 million as compensation, which is probably just a drop in the bucket. What happened? A lot of users reported that they lost up to 500,000 and then they received compensation of $2 or $3, which is of course ridiculous. And accordingly, it looks like Binance is just paying those 300 million back to itself. And yes, right now, Boycott Binance is trending on Twitter and many people are withdrawing their money, so there's potentially a chance that even an exchange like Binance could go bankrupt. I don't think that's the case at the moment, but I mean, just to be safe, you should probably withdraw your money. That's why I definitely wanted to bring this up again, because safety always comes first. And the fact that not everything is above board at Binance should be obvious to everyone, I think. What's very interesting is that there is both Binance and Binance Premium. Binance Premium is for hedge fund managers, for people who really have multi-millions sitting on Binance. And I've actually heard from insiders that Binance was down, which everyone knows, but that Binance Premium was still available for hedge fund managers. You could deposit and withdraw, and the whole thing really looks manipulated. Accordingly, I use other exchanges, as you all know, and that's basically it for the news. There was one more thing I saw, which I also found very interesting. Ethereum is number one when it comes to new developments in the crypto space. New projects, new developers, whatever it is, everyone is going to Ethereum. And Ethereum really is the chain of smart money. You just have to say it. Ethereum has established itself like that. Smart money, the big players, they all rely on Ethereum. And that's a good sign. I can also imagine that we could still see really good price targets for ETH. And to be honest, at the beginning of last year, it looked like Solana was going to overtake Ethereum. Nowadays, we know that's not going to happen. On Solana, we really only have these shitcoins, while on Ethereum, we actually have some well-founded, meaningful projects. But I would say that every project listed here is a winner. Because even SUI, for example, has really fought its way up impressively, and you just have to acknowledge that. That's really not bad at all. And that's basically it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. Check out the trading bots in these tough times, and with that, I'd say see you next time. Ciao!